The Pacific Ocean crashed against the shores of Coronado Beach as Sarah Martinez adjusted her gear one final time. At 26, she had spent the last 8 years preparing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the weight of 100 pairs of eyes watching her every move. The other candidates stood in perfect formation, their faces masks of concentration and barely contained anxiety. Sarah knew that look well. She had worn it herself countless times during her years as a Marine Corps sniper. The morning air was crisp with salt spray and anticipation. Instructor Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez stepped forward, his weathered face showing no emotion as he surveyed the fresh batch of hopefuls. His voice cut through the ocean breeze like a blade through silk. Welcome to basic underwater demolition/SEAL training. Most of you won't be here next week. Some of you won't be here tomorrow. And a few of you might not make it through today. Sarah felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach, but she pushed it down. She had learned long ago to channel that energy into focus. Her father had taught her that when she was 12, standing in the woods behind their Texas ranch with a .22 rifle in her small hands. "Breathe, Mija," he had whispered. "Let the fear sharpen your mind, not cloud it." Now, 14 years later, those words echoed in her mind as she stood among the elite candidates who had made it this far. The journey to this beach had been longer and more difficult for her than for most of the men around her. When she first announced her intention to try for the SEALs after the combat exclusion policy was lifted, her commanding officer had laughed outright. "Martinez, you're a hell of a Marine, but SEAL training breaks men who are twice your size. Why put yourself through that when you're already excelling where you are?" She had given him the same answer she had given everyone who questioned her decision. "Because excellence isn't about where you are, sir. It's about how far you're willing to go." The truth was more complicated. Sarah had grown up in a family where military service was as natural as breathing. Her grandfather had fought in Vietnam, her father had served in Desert Storm, and her older brother had been killed in action in Afghanistan 3 years earlier. When Miguel died, Sarah felt like a piece of her soul had been ripped away. But she also felt something else, a burning need to honor his memory by becoming the warrior he never got the chance to be. Miguel had always talked about the SEALs. As kids, they would watch documentaries about Navy special operations, and Miguel would point at the screen with stars in his eyes. "Someday, Sarah, someday I'm going to be one of those guys who runs toward the danger when everyone else runs away." That dream died with Miguel on a dusty road outside Kabul. But Sarah had picked it up and carried it with her through 8 years of Marine service, through countless hours of physical training, through the skeptical looks and whispered comments from fellow Marines who thought she was chasing an impossible dream. Chief Rodriguez began calling out names for the first evolution, a basic fitness test that would weed out anyone who wasn't ready for the hell that was about to begin. Sarah had prepared for this moment obsessively. She could run a 6-minute mile, do 200 push-ups without stopping, and hold her breath underwater for nearly 4 minutes. But she knew that physical capability was only part of what the instructors were looking for. "Martinez, Sarah." The chief's voice boomed across the beach. "Yeah, Chief," Sarah responded, stepping forward with the same confidence she had carried into every firefight during her deployments. As she moved to the starting line, she caught fragments of conversation from the other candidates. Some of it was supportive. A few of the men nodded respectfully, recognizing the Marine combat ribbons on her service record. But most of the whispers carried a different tone. "She's not going to last a day. What's the point of putting her through this when we all know how it's going to end? They're just making a political statement." Sarah had heard it all before. During her first deployment to Iraq, her squad leader had made it clear that he thought women had no place in combat zones. She had responded by consistently outperforming every metric he set for the team. By the end of that deployment, the same squad leader was recommending her for sniper school. The first test was a 4-mile beach run in full gear. As the whistle blew, Sarah settled into her pace. She had learned through years of experience that SEAL training wasn't a sprint. It was a marathon of suffering that would test every aspect of her character. The candidates spread out along the beach, and Sarah found herself in the middle of the pack, which was exactly where she wanted to be. Running beside her was Jackson Torres, a former Army Ranger who had already completed one tour with Delta Force. He glanced over at her, with curiosity rather than skepticism. "Heard you were a sniper," he said between breaths. "Still am," Sarah replied, her breathing steady despite the pace. "Confirmed kills." Sarah hesitated. She rarely talked about that part of her service, but something about Torres's direct approach made her answer honestly. 47. Torres stumbled slightly, then recovered his stride. "Jesus. And you're giving up that record to come here?" "Not giving it up," Sarah said. "Expanding it." By the time they reached the halfway point, several candidates had already dropped out, their dreams ending before they had really begun. Sarah maintained her position in the pack, focusing on her breathing and the rhythm of her feet hitting the sand. She had run this beach hundreds of times during her preparation, visualizing this exact moment. Behind her, she could hear the labored breathing of candidates who were already struggling. In front of her, the leaders of the pack were opening up distance, their longer strides eating up the beach. Sarah wasn't concerned with either group. Her race was against herself and the expectations that had been placed on her shoulders. As they rounded the turn for the final stretch, the wind picked up, throwing sand in their faces and making breathing more difficult. This was where the real test began, not just of physical conditioning, but of mental toughness. Sarah had learned that lesson during a particularly brutal firefight outside Fallujah, when her position had been overrun and she had spent 6 hours crawling through enemy territory to reach friendly lines. That night had taught her that the body could endure far more than the mind believed possible. When her legs had screamed for her to stop, she had kept crawling. Where her lungs had burned with each breath of dust-filled air, she had kept moving. And when her mind had whispered that it would be easier to give up, she had thought about Miguel and found the strength to continue. Now, as her legs began to feel the familiar burn of lactic acid buildup, she drew on that same reserve of mental toughness. The finish line was visible in the distance, and she could see Chief Rodriguez waiting with his stopwatch and clipboard. More importantly, she could see the cameras. The media attention had been inevitable once word leaked that a woman was attempting SEAL training. Sarah had tried to ignore it, but she knew that every step she took was being scrutinized and analyzed by people who had already made up their minds about whether she belonged here. She crossed the finish line with a time that put her squarely in the middle of the pack, exactly where she had planned to be. Too fast, and she would be seen as showing off. Too slow, and she would be dismissed as unfit for the program. The middle of the pack was where she could prove herself without drawing unnecessary attention. Chief Rodriguez marked her time and moved on to the next candidate without comment. Sarah took that as a good sign. In the military, no news was usually good news. The next evolution was water confidence testing in the Pacific Ocean. The candidates were required to swim 500 meters in full gear, followed by underwater, not tying exercises. Sarah had always been a strong swimmer, but the ocean was different from the controlled environment of a pool. The waves were unpredictable, the water was cold, and the salt stung her eyes and throat. As she entered the water, Sarah felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with facing a new challenge. The ocean was unforgiving. It didn't care about her gender, her background, or her motivations. It would test her on her own merits, which was exactly what she wanted. The swim portion went smoothly. Sarah's technique was efficient and her breathing controlled. She had spent countless hours in the water during her preparation, often swimming in conditions far worse than what they faced today. As she reached the halfway point, she realized she had moved up in the pack slightly. Several of the candidates who had been ahead of her during the run were struggling with the water portion of the test. The underwater exercises were more challenging. Candidates were required to tie specific knots while holding their breath at the bottom of a 15-foot pool. The water was crystal clear, but the pressure and the need to control panic made the task much more difficult than it appeared. Sarah descended to the bottom of the pool and began working on the first knot. Her lungs were already beginning to burn, but she forced herself to work methodically. Panic was the enemy of precision, and precision was what kept snipers alive. She tied the first knot and moved to the second, her movements deliberate and controlled. Above her, she could see the instructors watching through diving masks, taking notes on waterproof clipboards. Sarah finished the second knot and began ascending, her lungs screaming for air. She broke the surface and took a controlled breath, then prepared for the next ascent. The pattern repeated itself 6 more times. With each dive, her confidence grew. The underwater work was challenging, but it was also familiar in a way. During her sniper training, she had learned to control her breathing and heart rate under extreme stress. The skills translated well to underwater operations. By the end of the water confidence testing, Sarah had maintained her position in the middle of the pack. More importantly, she had completed every evolution without drawing negative attention from the instructors. Several candidates had already been dismissed for failing to meet minimum standards, but Sarah remained. As the candidates gathered for the evening briefing, Sarah noticed that the dynamics of the group were beginning to shift. The initial curiosity about her presence was giving way to a grudging respect for her performance. She wasn't the strongest or the fastest candidate, but she was consistent and unflappable. Jackson Torres approached her as they prepared for chow. "Nice work in the water today," he said. "Thanks," Sarah replied. "You too." "Listen," Torres said, lowering his voice. "I know some of the guys are still skeptical about having a woman here, but you're proving them wrong one evolution at a time. Keep doing what you're doing." Sarah appreciated the encouragement, but she knew that the real tests were still ahead. The first day of SEAL training was designed to establish baselines and eliminate the most obvious failures. The real crucible would come the weeks ahead, when sleep deprivation and constant stress would strip away all pretense and reveal who truly had what it took to earn the SEAL Trident. That night, as she lay in her bunk listening to the sound of the ocean outside, Sarah thought about the long journey that had brought her to this point. Every doubt, every criticism, every obstacle had only strengthened her resolve. She had come too far to fail now, and she carried with her the memory of everyone who had believed in her potential. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She had survived her first day of SEAL training, and she was ready for whatever came next. The path to earning the Trident was long and uncertain, but Sarah Martinez was prepared to walk every step of it. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life, and she wasn't about to let anything stand between her and her brother's dream. Week 3 of basic underwater demolition/SEAL training brought with it the kind of exhaustion that seeped into a person's bones and stayed there. Sarah Martinez had lost 12 pounds, gained calluses on top of her calluses, and discovered muscles she didn't know existed. But she was still here, which was more than could be said for 30% of her original class. The morning surf was particularly rough as the remaining candidates gathered for another day of what the instructors cheerfully called physical training. Sarah had learned to dread that phrase. In SEAL training, physical training was never just about fitness. It was about breaking down the mental barriers that separated possible from impossible. Chief Rodriguez stood before them with his familiar expression of controlled malevolence. Beside him was a new face, Senior Chief Patricia Williams, a Navy EOD specialist who had volunteered to serve as an additional instructor for this historic class. Williams was the first female senior chief to be assigned to SEAL training in any capacity, and her presence had stirred up almost as much controversy as Sarah's. "Today we're going to work on weapons proficiency," Chief Rodriguez announced. "You'll be rotating through 5 stations: pistol marksmanship, rifle accuracy, room clearing, demolitions familiarization, and tactical movement under fire. Senior Chief Williams will be running the rifle station." Sarah felt a flutter of anticipation mixed with nervousness. Weapons training had always been her strongest suit, but she knew that SEAL standards were different from Marine standards. Everything here was designed to push candidates beyond their previous limits. The first station was pistol marksmanship with the standard issue SIG Sauer P226. Sarah had extensive experience with the weapon from her deployments, but the targets were set at distances and in conditions that made precision extremely challenging. The candidates had to engage targets while wearing full gear, including a gas mask that limited visibility and made breathing difficult. Sarah stepped up to the firing line and settled into her shooting stance. The familiar weight of the weapon in her hands was comforting, like greeting an old friend. She controlled her breathing, found her sight picture, and began engaging targets with a methodical precision that had made her one of the Marine Corps' most effective snipers. The first magazine was clean, all hits in the center mass area of the targets. The second magazine required headshots at 50 meters while wearing the gas mask. Sarah adjusted her grip slightly and continued firing, each shot placed with deliberate accuracy. Behind her, she could hear other candidates struggling with the conditions. The gas mask made precise shooting significantly more challenging, and several were having difficulty maintaining accuracy at the longer distances. Sarah had trained extensively with NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical equipment during her Marine service, and the restricted vision felt familiar rather than hindering. "Martinez," Chief Rodriguez called out. "Step back and let me see your target." Sarah cleared her weapon and stepped aside as the chief walked down range to examine her work. Every shot had found its mark, with most clustered in a group no larger than a silver dollar. The chief studied the target for a long moment, then returned to the firing line without comment. The next candidate stepped up, and Sarah moved to the rifle station where Senior Chief Williams was waiting. Williams was a compact woman with graying hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Her reputation in the EOD community was legendary. She had defused more improvised explosive devices than almost anyone in the Navy, and she had the scars to prove it. "Martinez," Williams said by way of greeting. "I've read your file. Impressive numbers." "Thank you, Senior Chief." "Don't thank me yet. SEAL shooting standards are different from Marine standards. Here, a miss isn't just a mark on your record. It's a dead teammate. Show me what you can do." The rifle range was set up to simulate urban combat conditions. Targets appeared at random intervals from behind cover, requiring split-second target identification and engagement. The scenario was designed to test not just accuracy, but decision-making under pressure. Sarah picked up the assigned weapon, an M4A1 carbine with advanced optics. She performed a functions check, adjusted the stock to fit her frame, and moved to the starting position. The course was a maze of plywood walls and doorways with threat and non-threat targets mixed throughout. "Begin," Williams called out. Sarah moved through the course with fluid precision, her movements economical and purposeful. Years of combat experience had taught her how to read a tactical environment instantly, identifying cover and concealment while maintaining situational awareness. The first target appeared, a threat silhouette with a weapon. Sarah engaged with 2 quick shots to center mass and continued moving. The course was designed to be disorienting, with multiple levels and unexpected angles. But Sarah's sniper training had taught her to build mental maps of complex environments, and she navigated the obstacles while maintaining perfect shooting form. Threat targets fell with mechanical precision, while non-threat targets remained untouched. When the course was complete, Senior Chief Williams walked it with Sarah, examining each target. The results spoke for themselves. Every threat neutralized, every non-threat protected, and shot placement that would have been lethal in real combat. "Time, 47 seconds, Williams announced. "That's the second fastest time I've recorded, and the most accurate." Sarah felt a surge of pride, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned that in SEAL training, success was measured by consistency over time, not single achievements. "Who had the fastest time?" Sarah asked. "Jackson Torres, at 45 seconds. But he had 2 misses on long-range targets. In real combat, your performance will have saved more lives." As Sarah moved to the next station, she noticed that word of her shooting performance was spreading through the class. Some of the candidates looked impressed, others skeptical. She had learned to ignore both reactions and focus on her own performance. The room clearing station tested small unit tactics and communication skills. Candidates worked in pairs to clear a series of rooms filled with hostile targets while protecting civilians. Sarah was partnered with David Chun, a former Army infantry officer who had served 3 combat tours in Iraq. "You take point," Chun said as they prepared for their run. I've heard you know what you're doing. Sarah appreciated his confidence, but she also knew that room clearing was a team effort. The point person might get the glory, but survival depended on trust and communication between partners. We move as a team, Sarah replied. I'll take the initial entry, you cover my 6, and handle the left side of each room. Communication is key. Call out what you see. They moved through the course like dancers following a rehearsed routine. Sarah's entry techniques were textbook perfect, her movement through doorways quick and controlled. Chun proved to be an excellent partner, covering her movements and calling out threats with precision. The first room contained 3 hostile targets and 2 civilians. Sarah neutralized the immediate threats while Chun secured the non-combatants. They cleared the room in seconds and moved to the next challenge. By the time they completed the course, their teamwork had become seamless. Sarah's shooting accuracy combined with Chen's tactical awareness had produced a flawless run. Every threat eliminated, every civilian protected, and total time that beat the course record by 3 seconds. The demolition station tested basic understanding of explosive devices and their tactical applications. This was Sarah's weakest area, as her Marine training had focused more on small arms and long-range precision shooting. But she approached the instruction with the same methodical intensity she brought to everything else. Instructor Petty Officer First Class Mike Sullivan walked the candidates through the basics of plastic explosives, fusing systems, and blast calculations. Sarah took detailed notes and asked pointed questions about applications and safety procedures. Her inexperience was obvious, but so was her determination to master the material. The key to demolition's work, Sullivan explained, is understanding that explosives are tools, not weapons. They require respect, knowledge, and precision. A sloppy demo job will kill you and your teammates faster than enemy fire. Sarah absorbed every detail, drawing connections between the explosive calculations and the ballistics work she was already familiar with. Both required understanding physics, environmental factors, and precise measurement. The fundamentals were transferable, even if the applications were different. The final station tested tactical movement under simulated fire. Candidates had to navigate an obstacle course while instructors fired blank ammunition and set off simulated explosions. The goal was to maintain composure and tactical awareness while under stress. This was where Sarah's combat experience proved most valuable. She had been under real fire enough times to understand the difference between actual danger and simulated stress. While other candidates ducked and flinched at the blank rounds, Sarah moved with the calm precision of someone who had learned to function in actual combat. The course required candidates to low-crawl under wire obstacles, sprint between covered positions, and navigate through smoke screens while maintaining tactical awareness. Sarah's movements were textbook perfect, her breathing controlled, and her situational awareness complete. As she completed the final obstacle, Chief Rodriguez was waiting with his stopwatch. Time, 2 minutes, 18 seconds. That ties the course record. Booyah, Chief. Martinez, step over here. Sarah followed the chief to a position away from the other candidates. Her heart rate increased slightly. Individual attention from instructors was rarely a good thing in SEAL training. I've been watching your performance over the past 3 weeks, Rodriguez said. Your shooting scores are exceptional, your tactical movement is solid, and your composure under stress is better than most of the men in your class. Thank you, Chief. I'm not giving you a compliment, Martinez. I'm giving you a warning. You're performing well enough to draw attention, and attention in SEAL training is usually a problem. Some people are going to say you're getting special treatment. Others are going to say you're just a diversity hire who got lucky. Both groups are going to be watching you extra closely, waiting for you to fail. Sarah had expected this conversation eventually. What do you recommend, Chief? Keep doing what you're doing. Don't try to prove anything to the critics, and don't let the praise go to your head. Just focus on being the best SEAL candidate you can be. The rest will take care of itself. Roger that, Chief. As Sarah rejoined her class for the end-of-day briefing, she reflected on Rodriguez's words. She had always known that her path to the SEAL Trident would be more complicated than that of her male counterparts. Every success would be scrutinized, every failure would be magnified, and every decision would be analyzed through the lens of her gender. But she had also proven something to herself today. Her shooting scores weren't just competitive, they were exceptional. Her tactical movement was instinctive, and her ability to perform under pressure was equal to anyone in her class. She belonged here not because of diversity initiatives or political statements, but because she had earned her place through skill and determination. That evening, as the candidates cleaned their weapons and prepared for another day of training, Jackson Torres approached Sarah with a proposition. "Some of us are forming study groups for the academic portions of training," he said. "Combat medicine, navigation, communications protocols. You interested in joining?" The invitation represented something significant. Study groups in SEAL training were serious business. They could mean the difference between passing and failing the intellectual challenges that lay ahead. More importantly, they represented acceptance by her peers. "Count me in," Sarah replied. "Good. We meet after chow every night. Fair warning, though, these guys are serious about this stuff. No social hour, just pure focus on mastering the material." Sarah smiled. "That's exactly what I'm looking for." As the week progressed, Sarah found herself settling into the rhythm of SEAL training. The physical challenges remained brutal, but her body was adapting. More importantly, her mind was learning to process stress and fatigue in new ways. She was becoming harder, more focused, and more confident in her abilities. The shooting scores continued to set her apart from the rest of the class. Her accuracy with both pistol and rifle was consistently in the top percentile, and her tactical movement scores were equally impressive. But Sarah was learning that individual excellence was only part of what made a successful SEAL. The real test was how well she worked as part of a team. During a particularly challenging boat crew exercise, Sarah found herself working with 5 other candidates to navigate heavy surf in an inflatable boat. The exercise required perfect timing, communication, and trust. One person's mistake could dump the entire crew into the churning Pacific Ocean. Sarah was assigned as the boat crew leader for the Evolution, a role that required her to coordinate the movements of 5 strong-willed individuals under extremely challenging conditions. The surf was running 8 to 10 feet, and the wind was gusting up to 30 knots. "Listen up," Sarah called out over the sound of crashing waves. "We're going to time our entry for the lull between sets. Chun, you're on bow line. Torres, stern. Rodriguez and Mitchell, you're on the oars. Williams, your navigation." The crew responded to her commands with the kind of immediate obedience that only came from proven competence. Over the past weeks, Sarah had demonstrated her abilities so consistently that questions about her leadership had been replaced by confidence in her judgment. The boat launch was textbook perfect. Sarah timed the entry precisely, and her crew executed their roles with precision. They cleared the surf zone cleanly and began the navigation portion of the exercise, which required them to reach a series of waypoints using only compass and dead reckoning. Sarah's navigation skills, honed during countless marine patrols in urban and desert environments, proved invaluable. She guided the crew through the course with minimal error, and they completed the exercise with the second fastest time of the day. As they dragged their boat up the beach at the end of the Evolution, Chief Rodriguez was waiting for them. "Outstanding work, Boat Crew 7, he announced. "That's the kind of teamwork that wins wars." Sarah felt a surge of pride that was different from her individual achievements. Leading a successful team effort felt more significant than any personal accomplishment. It proved that she could not only perform at SEAL standards, but could help others do the same. That night, as she lay in her rack listening to the sound of exhausted candidates around her, Sarah realized that she had reached an important milestone. She was no longer the outsider trying to prove she belonged. She had become an integral part of her class, a leader whose abilities were recognized and respected by her peers. The hardest challenges still lay ahead. Hell Week was approaching, along with advanced training phases that would test every aspect of her character and ability. But Sarah felt ready for whatever came next. She had found her place among these elite warriors, and she was determined to see her journey through to the end. Hell Week arrived like a storm that had been building on the horizon for months. Sarah Martinez stood in formation at 0400 hours on Sunday morning, watching the instructors prepare for what would either make or break her dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL. The statistics were sobering. Historically, 60 to 70% of candidates quit during these 5.5 days of continuous training with minimal sleep. The air was thick with tension and the smell of ocean spray. Around her, 57 candidates remained from the original class of 83. Sarah had watched good men ring the bell and walk away, their dreams ending with 3 sharp chimes that echoed across the compound. She had no intention of becoming another statistic. Chief Rodriguez stood before them with a different energy than usual. Gone was the controlled instruction of previous weeks. This was something primal, designed to strip away everything except raw determination and the will to continue when logic screamed for surrender. "Welcome to Hell Week," he announced, his voice carrying across the formation like a death sentence. "For the next 5 days, you will discover things about yourselves that you never knew existed. Some of you will find strength you didn't know you possessed. Others will find limits they can't cross. The ocean doesn't care about your feelings, your background, or your excuses. Neither do I." Sarah felt the familiar flutter of adrenaline in her stomach, but this time it was different. This was the moment she had trained for, visualized, and prepared for through 8 years of military service. Every difficult day in the Marines, every hour spent in the gym pushing past her limits, every night spent studying SEAL tactics and techniques had been preparation for this week. The first evolution was surf torture, lying in the churning Pacific Ocean while waves crashed over their bodies. The water temperature was 58 degrees, cold enough to induce hypothermia within hours. Candidates lay linked arm in arm, struggling to maintain body heat while waves pounded them relentlessly. Sarah positioned herself between Jackson Torres and David Chun, 2 of the strongest performers in the class. She had learned during the previous weeks that survival in SEAL training was often about choosing the right teammates. These men had proven themselves reliable under pressure, and their presence gave her additional confidence. The cold hit her like a physical blow, driving the air from her lungs and sending shock waves through her nervous system. But Sarah had experienced cold before. During winter training exercises in the mountains of Colorado, during night patrols in the Afghan highlands where temperatures dropped below 0. This was severe, but it was survivable. The key was mental. Sarah began running through mathematical calculations in her head, keeping her mind active and focused. She calculated ballistic trajectories for various rifle cartridges, worked through complex navigation problems, and recited the NATO phonetic alphabet backward. Anything to keep her consciousness sharp and prevent the dull acceptance that led to hypothermia. Around her, candidates were beginning to show signs of distress. Some were shivering uncontrollably, their teeth chattering so violently that they couldn't speak coherently. Others had gone quiet, their eyes vacant and unfocused. Sarah recognized the signs of advancing cold injury and began checking on her teammates. "Torres," she whispered, "how are your fingers?" "Can't feel them," he replied through gritted teeth. "Wiggle them. Keep the blood moving. Think about something warm, your girlfriend, a hot shower, whatever works." The technique was something she had learned during survival training. When the body began shutting down non-essential functions, the mind could override some of those responses through conscious effort. Sarah had used similar techniques during long-range shooting missions, maintaining fine motor control despite extreme environmental conditions. Hours passed like years. Waves continued to crash over them, each one seeming colder than the last. Sarah watched as the first candidate stood up and walked toward the bell. Then another, and another. By the time the evolution ended, 8 more members of their class had quit. The instructors pulled the remaining candidates from the surf and immediately began the next evolution, log PT, with telephone poles weighing over 200 pounds. Teams of 7 had to carry, lift, and manipulate these logs through various exercises while soaking wet and already exhausted from the surf torture. Sarah's team included Torres, Chun, and for other candidates who had proven themselves during the previous weeks of training. She noticed immediately that their teamwork was better than most of the other groups. The weeks of training together had created an almost telepathic understanding of each other's strengths and capabilities. "Martinez, take the lead position," Torres called out as they approached their log. "You've got the best eye for balance points." Sarah moved to the front of the log and assessed the weight distribution. Her experience with heavy equipment during Marine training helped her identify the optimal grip points and lifting angles. "Everybody grab on. We lift on my count. 1, 2, 3. The log came up smoothly, a testament to their coordination. Other teams were struggling with basic lifts, their exhausted members unable to synchronize their efforts. Sarah's team moved through the exercises with military precision, their log staying level and controlled throughout each movement. The log PT continued for hours, broken only by occasional trips back to the surf for more cold water conditioning. Sarah's hands were raw and bleeding from gripping the rough wood, but she maintained her focus on team coordination and motivation. She had learned that leadership in extreme conditions meant setting an example of steady performance regardless of personal discomfort. As Monday night turned into Tuesday morning, the sleep deprivation began to take its toll. Sarah found herself hallucinating occasionally, seeing movement in her peripheral vision that wasn't there, hearing voices when only the sound of wind and waves filled the air. But her years of combat experience had taught her to function despite mental fatigue, and she continued performing at a high level. The weapons training during Hell Week was particularly challenging because it required precision while exhausted. Sarah's shooting scores remained consistently high, even as other top performers began to show degradation in their marksmanship. Her muscle memory was so deeply ingrained that she could maintain accuracy even when her conscious mind was struggling with fatigue. During a night navigation exercise on Tuesday, Sarah's team was tasked with reaching a series of waypoints using only compass and pace count. The course covered 5 miles of difficult terrain, including beach sand, rocky outcroppings, and dense vegetation. They had to complete the navigation while carrying full combat loads and staying below enemy observation. Sarah took point for the exercise, using navigation skills she had developed during countless patrols in Iraq and Afghanistan. The key was maintaining accurate pace, count despite exhaustion and difficult terrain. She counted every step, adjusting for uphill and downhill gradients, and constantly checked her compass bearing to ensure they stayed on course. The first waypoint was reached exactly on schedule. Sarah's dead reckoning had been perfect, bringing them within meters of the designated location despite the challenging conditions. Her teammates looked at her with new respect. Navigation at this level required not just technical skill, but extraordinary mental discipline under stress. "How the hell did you do that?" Chun whispered as they approached the second waypoint. "Practice," Sarah replied simply, and refusing to accept that tired is an excuse for sloppy work. They completed the navigation course with the fastest time of the night, a performance that caught the attention of the instructing staff. Chief Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside during a brief rest period between evolutions. "Martinez, your performance this week has been exceptional. Your shooting scores are still the highest in the class, your leadership during team events has been outstanding, and your navigation skills are better than most active duty SEALs I know." "Thank you, Chief. But I need to ask you something directly. Are you using any kind of performance-enhancing substances? Stimulants, painkillers, anything like that?" The question stung, but Sarah understood why it had to be asked. Her performance during Hell Week had been so consistent that it might appear unnatural to observers who didn't understand her background. "No, Chief. Nothing but coffee when it's available, same as everyone else." "Then, how are you maintaining this level of performance when men who are bigger and stronger are falling apart?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. "I think there are 2 reasons, Chief. First, I've been in actual combat enough times to know the difference between real danger and training stress. My mind doesn't panic because it knows this isn't life or death. Second, I've been preparing for this specific challenge for 8 years. Every difficult day in the Marines was preparation for this week." Rodriguez studied her for a long moment. "That makes sense. Keep doing what you're doing, but be aware that your performance is generating attention. Some people are going to claim that standards are being lowered to help you succeed. Others are going to say that your success proves women don't belong in special operations because you're making the men look bad. Either way, you're going to face criticism. I understand, Chief, but I can't control what other people think. I can only control my own performance. Wednesday brought the notorious surf passage evolution, where boat crews had to navigate their rubber boats through dangerous surf conditions to reach objectives on offshore rocks. The seas were running 12 to 15 feet, with winds gusting up to 40 knots. Several crews had already failed the evolution, their boats capsizing in the heavy surf and sending candidates swimming for their lives. Sarah's boat crew had been together for several weeks now, and their teamwork had become instinctive. She served as the crew leader for this evolution, responsible for timing their entry through the surf and navigating to the objective. "Same plan as always," Sarah called out over the wind. "We wait for the lull between sets, time our entry perfectly, and power through. Once we're past the break zone, we maintain bearing to the objective and adjust for current drift." The crew trusted her judgment completely. They had seen her navigate them successfully through every maritime evolution, and her calm confidence was infectious. As they sat in their boat, waiting for the optimal moment to launch, Sarah studied the wave patterns and wind conditions with the intensity of a chess master analyzing the board. "Now," she called out. The crew launched their boat with perfect timing, hitting the water just as a lull developed between wave sets. Sarah's navigation was flawless, bringing them to their objective with minimal deviation despite the challenging conditions. They completed the surf passage without incident, while other crews struggled with capsizes and failed navigational attempts. The success of her boat crew during such a difficult evolution sent a clear message to the instructing staff and her fellow candidates. Sarah wasn't just surviving Hell Week. She was excelling during the most challenging portions of training. Her leadership, technical skills, and mental toughness were all operating at the highest levels despite the extreme stress and sleep deprivation. Thursday brought individual psychological testing designed to push candidates beyond their mental breaking points. Sarah was placed in a stress position for hours, forced to hold uncomfortable positions while instructors shouted at her, and created artificial emergencies requiring split-second decisions. This was where her sniper training proved most valuable. "This isn't your world." Sarah maintained her position and answered calmly. "Because this is exactly my world, instructor. I've earned my place here, and I'm going to earn the trident." The response seemed to satisfy the instructors, who moved on to pressure other candidates. Sarah had passed another test by demonstrating that her motivation was genuine and her commitment unshakable. As Friday morning arrived, Sarah realized she was going to complete Hell Week successfully. Around her, 38 candidates remained from the 57 who had started. The attrition had been severe, but those who remained had proven themselves capable of extraordinary performance under the most challenging conditions possible. The final evolution was a beach run in full gear, covering the same route they had run on their first day of training months earlier. But this time they were running as proven SEAL candidates, their bodies and minds tempered by the crucible of Hell Week. Sarah's pace was strong and steady, her form showing little evidence of the extreme stress she had endured. Her shooting scores throughout the week had remained consistently high. Her leadership during team events had been exceptional, and her individual performance had set new standards for mental and physical toughness. As she crossed the finish line, Chief Rodriguez was waiting with something she had never seen before, a genuine smile of approval. "Outstanding work, Martinez. Welcome to the other side of Hell Week." Sarah felt a surge of emotion that surprised her with its intensity. She had done more than just survive. She had thrived during the most challenging test of her life. More importantly, she had proven to herself and everyone watching that gender was irrelevant when it came to warrior spirit and tactical competence. The statistics from her Hell Week performance would become legendary within the SEAL community. Her shooting scores had remained in the 98th percentile despite extreme stress and sleep deprivation. Her leadership during team events had resulted in her crews achieving the highest success rates in several evolutions. And her individual mental toughness had impressed even the most skeptical instructors. But For Sarah, the numbers were less important than the knowledge that she had passed the ultimate test of character. She had faced her deepest fears, pushed beyond her perceived limitations, and emerged stronger than she had ever imagined possible. Hell Week was behind her, but the most exciting challenges still lay ahead. The path to earning her SEAL trident was far from over, but Sarah Martinez had proven she belonged among America's most elite warriors. The only question now was how far her extraordinary abilities would take her in the advanced phases of training that awaited. 6 months after Hell Week, Sarah Martinez found herself standing on a windswept range in the mountains of Southern California, preparing for the advanced marksmanship phase that would separate good shooters from legendary ones. The remaining 31 members of her SEAL class had progressed through dive phase and land warfare training, but this was where individual excellence would be measured against the highest possible standards. Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Kane stood before them, his weathered face showing the accumulated stress of 25 years in naval special warfare. Kane was a legend in the SEAL community, a sniper instructor whose students had compiled kill records that were the stuff of military folklore. His presence meant they were approaching the pinnacle of American military marksmanship training. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kane began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute expertise, "you are about to begin advanced precision shooting training. Over the next 4 weeks, you will learn to engage targets at distances and in conditions that would be considered impossible by conventional military standards. Some of you will discover that you have the potential for truly exceptional marksmanship. Others will learn their limitations and find other ways to contribute to team effectiveness." Sarah felt the familiar flutter of anticipation that always accompanied weapons training, but this time it was mixed with something else. The knowledge that this phase would either validate her reputation as an exceptional marksman or expose any weaknesses in her fundamental skills. The reputation she had built during basic training and Hell Week was about to be tested against the most demanding shooting standards in the military. The first week focused on precision rifle systems and long-range ballistics. Sarah was issued a customized .300 Winchester Magnum rifle equipped with advanced optics and precision-tuned components. The weapon was a work of art, capable of delivering sub-minute of angle accuracy at distances exceeding 1,000 meters. But mechanical precision meant nothing without the human element to harness it effectively. Master Chief Kane began with a lecture on advanced ballistics that went far beyond anything Sarah had learned during her Marine sniper training. They covered atmospheric conditions, wind reading at multiple altitudes, Earth's rotation effects on bullet trajectory, and temperature variations that could affect powder burn rates and muzzle velocity. Precision shooting at extended range is part science, part art, and part magic, Kane explained. The science is understanding all the factors that affect bullet trajectory. The art is reading environmental conditions that can't be measured with instruments. The magic is developing the intuitive feel that separates competent marksmen from true masters of the craft. Sarah absorbed every detail with intense focus. Her Marine training had given her a solid foundation in basic marksmanship, but this level of instruction was opening entirely new dimensions of understanding. She took extensive notes and asked pointed questions about wind estimation techniques and environmental compensation methods. The practical shooting began with known distance targets at 600 meters. Sarah settled into her firing position behind the precision rifle, feeling the weapon's perfect balance and smooth action. Her shooting position was textbook perfect, developed through thousands of hours of practice during her Marine career. The first shot was a center hit. So was the second, and the third. Sarah's shooting group for the first 10 rounds measured less than 3 inches at 600 meters, a level of precision that drew immediate attention from the instructing staff. Master Chief Kane approached her position as she completed the string. "Martinez, let me see your data book," he requested. Sarah handed over her shooting log, which contained detailed records of atmospheric conditions, wind readings, and point of impact data for each shot. Kane studied the entries carefully, noting the methodical approach to data collection and the consistency of her shooting performance. "Your fundamentals are outstanding," Kane observed, "but I want to see how you handle variables you can't control. Next evolution is unknown distance targets with changing environmental conditions. The unknown distance phase tested Sarah's ability to estimate range and compensate for environmental factors without the benefit of laser rangefinders or detailed ballistic computers. Targets appeared at various distances between 400 and 1,200 meters, requiring instant range estimation and environmental compensation. Sarah used techniques she had developed during combat deployments, combining visual reference points with understanding of target angular size to estimate distance accurately. Her first shot at an 800-meter target was a direct center hit. The second target, at 1,000 meters, required compensation for a significant crosswind. Sarah read the wind patterns, adjusted her point of aim, and delivered another center hit. By the end of the first week, Sarah's shooting scores were significantly ahead of every other candidate in the class. More importantly, her consistency was remarkable. While other exceptional marksmen might deliver outstanding individual shots, Sarah's performance was uniformly excellent across all conditions and distances. Jackson Torres approached her during a break between shooting sessions, his expression mixing admiration with curiosity. "I've been shooting competitively since I was 12 years old, and I've never seen anyone maintain that level of consistency. What's your secret?" Sarah considered how to explain something that had become instinctive through years of practice. "I think it's about eliminating variables," she said finally. "Every aspect of shooting that I control completely. Body position, breathing, trigger press, follow through. Everything has to be exactly the same for every shot. That way, the only variables are environmental, and those can be read and compensated for. But what about the mental side? Don't you ever get psyched out by a difficult shot? In combat, there's no time to be psyched out. You either make the shot or people die. I learned to treat every shot the same way. Just another problem to solve with the available tools and information." The second week introduced night shooting and low-light operations. Sarah found herself adapting quickly to the challenges of precision shooting with thermal optics and image intensification equipment. Her ability to read environmental conditions remained consistent even when visual references were limited, and her shooting scores showed minimal degradation from daylight performance. The night shooting exercises culminated in a challenging scenario where candidates had to engage multiple targets at various distances while moving through realistic tactical situations. Sarah's performance was flawless. Every target neutralized with single shots, movement between positions executed with tactical precision, and overall time that set a new course record. Master Chief Kane pulled her aside after the exercise for a private conversation. "Martinez, I need to ask you something directly. Have you ever considered specialized sniper training beyond what the SEALs typically provide?" "What do you mean, Master Chief?" "There are advanced programs for exceptional marksmen, courses that deal with truly extreme long-range shooting, and specialized tactical applications. Your performance suggests you might be a candidate for that level of training." Sarah felt a surge of excitement at the possibility. "I'm interested in any training that would make me more effective, Master Chief. We'll discuss it after you complete this phase. But I want you to understand something. The level of performance you're demonstrating is extremely rare. In 25 years of instruction, I've seen maybe a dozen students with your combination of technical skill and mental consistency." The third week brought moving target engagement and multiple target scenarios. Sarah excelled at both. Her ability to track moving targets showing the same precision she demonstrated on stationary ones. During one particularly challenging exercise, she engaged 12 targets at various distances in less than 90 seconds, achieving 11 direct hits and one marginal hit that would still have been lethal in combat. Her classmates had begun to treat her shooting ability with something approaching reverence. During team exercises, they automatically deferred to her judgment on anything related to precision shooting or long-range reconnaissance. Sarah found herself becoming the unofficial marksmanship instructor for the class, helping other candidates improve their shooting fundamentals. David Chun had been struggling with consistency at longer ranges, and Sarah spent several evenings working with him on breathing techniques and trigger control. The key is making every shot exactly the same, she explained as they practiced dry firing exercises. Your body has to become a human shooting machine. Same position, same breathing pattern, same trigger press every single time. Under her instruction, Chen's shooting improved dramatically. By the end of the week, his scores had improved by 30%, and his consistency had reached acceptable standards for SEAL operations. Sarah found that teaching others actually enhanced her own understanding of marksmanship fundamentals. The final week of advanced marksmanship training culminated in a comprehensive test that combined all the skills they had learned. Candidates had to engage targets at distances up to 1,500 meters under various environmental conditions, while dealing with time pressure and tactical complications. Sarah's performance during the final examination was nothing short of extraordinary. She achieved perfect scores on all measured categories: accuracy, consistency, speed, and tactical movement. Her longest successful engagement was at 1,400 meters, where she placed 3 consecutive shots within a 6-inch circle despite challenging wind conditions and limited visibility. Master Chief Kane called the entire class together for the results briefing. Over the past 4 weeks, you have completed the most demanding marksmanship training offered by the United States military. The standards are deliberately set at a level that challenges even exceptional shooters, because SEAL operations require capabilities that exceed normal military requirements. He paused and looked directly at Sarah. However, one member of this class has achieved performance levels that exceed even our most optimistic expectations. Candidate Martinez has achieved perfect scores in every measured category, set new course records in multiple exercises, and demonstrated shooting consistency that ranks among the finest I have observed in my career. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and embarrassment at the public recognition. She had worked hard for these results, but she also knew that exceptional performance brought increased scrutiny and expectations. After the formal briefing, Kane approached her with a proposal that would change the trajectory of her naval career. Martinez, I've spoken with Naval Special Warfare Command about your performance. They want to fast-track you for specialized sniper training that's normally reserved for operators with several years of team experience. What kind of specialized training, Master Chief? Advanced long-range interdiction, counter-sniper operations, and precision shooting in extreme environments. It's the highest level of marksmanship training the military provides, and successful completion would make you one of the most capable precision shooters in the world. Sarah felt her heart racing at the opportunity. This was beyond anything she had imagined when she first decided to attempt SEAL training. What would that mean for my progression through the teams? You would complete your basic SEAL qualification first, then be assigned to a team with specialized reconnaissance and precision shooting responsibilities. Your role would focus on the most challenging shooting problems that conventional teams encounter. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a figure Sarah recognized from photographs, but had never met in person: Admiral Patricia Sinclair, the first woman to achieve flag rank in naval special warfare. Sinclair had been following Sarah's progress through SEAL training, and her presence indicated that this conversation had significance far beyond individual career development. Candidate Martinez, Admiral Sinclair began. Your performance during SEAL training has been exceptional, but your marksmanship scores are in a category by themselves. Master Chief Kane tells me your shooting ability rivals that of operators with decades of experience. Thank you, Admiral. I've worked hard to develop these skills. I'm sure you have. But I want to discuss the broader implications of your success. You're not just becoming a Navy SEAL. You're becoming a symbol of what women can achieve in special operations. That brings opportunities, but it also brings responsibilities. Sarah understood the weight of what the Admiral was saying. Her success would influence policies and attitudes that affected other women who might follow in her path. I understand, Admiral. How can I help? By continuing to excel. By proving that standards don't need to be lowered when qualified women enter special operations. And by showing that diversity of backgrounds and experiences makes our forces stronger, not weaker. As they concluded their conversation, Sarah reflected on how far she had come from that first day on the beach at Coronado. She had not only survived SEAL training, she had excelled at the most challenging aspects of it. Her shooting scores had established her as one of the most capable marksmen ever to complete the program, and her leadership abilities had earned the respect of instructors and classmates alike. But more importantly, she had proven that her brother Miguel's dream could become reality through dedication, skill, and unwavering determination. The trident was within reach now, and with it would come opportunities to serve at the highest levels of military excellence. The advanced training that lay ahead would push her abilities even further, but Sarah felt ready for whatever challenges awaited. She had found her calling among America's most elite warriors, and she was prepared to take her place in their ranks as both a proven operator and a pioneer for those who would follow. 2 years after earning her SEAL Trident, Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez crouched behind a rocky outcrop in the mountains of Afghanistan, her rifle trained on a compound 800 meters away. Through her scope, she could see the high-value target that her team had been tracking for 3 weeks, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the region. The shot would be challenging. Crosswinds were gusting unpredictably through the mountain valleys. The target was partially concealed behind cover, and the angle required compensation for significant elevation changes. But Sarah had made more difficult shots during her time with SEAL Team 6, where her exceptional marksmanship had earned her a permanent position as the team's primary precision marksman. Overwatch 1, "This is Ground Leader," came the voice of Lieutenant Commander James Morrison through her earpiece. "Target is approaching the window. You have authorization for engagement when ready." Sarah settled deeper into her shooting position, her breathing controlled, and her heartbeat steady. The custom .300 Winchester Magnum rifle felt like an extension of her body, its precision-tuned components responding to her touch with mechanical perfection. 2 years of constant training and operational experience had refined her shooting to an almost supernatural level of consistency. She studied the wind patterns through her scope, noting the movement of dust and vegetation at various distances between her position and the target. The wind was complex, different velocities and directions at multiple points along the bullet's trajectory. Sarah made her calculations instinctively, her mind processing environmental data with the speed and accuracy of a computer. The target appeared in the window, presenting a partial profile that offered approximately 12 inches of vital area. Sarah adjusted her point of aim, exhaling slowly as she began her trigger press. The rifle fired with its familiar sharp crack, the bullet beginning its journey across the valley with perfect precision. 800 meters away, the Taliban commander dropped immediately. Through her scope, Sarah confirmed the hit and began scanning for additional targets while her spotter called in the successful engagement. "Ground Leader, this is Overwatch 1. Target down, confirmed kill. Area appears clear of additional threats. Outstanding work, Overwatch 1. Ground team is moving in for confirmation and intelligence gathering." As Sarah watched her teammates advance on the compound, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The young Marine who had walked onto the beach at Coronado 3 years earlier had been transformed by SEAL training into one of the most effective precision shooters in American military history. Her reputation within the special operations community had grown with each successful mission. The shooting records she had set during training were now being matched and exceeded in actual combat operations. Her current confirmed kill count stood at 93, with an accuracy rate that exceeded 97%, statistics that had made her a legend among her peers and a nightmare for enemy forces. But the numbers only told part of the story. Sarah's value to her team went far beyond her shooting ability. Her tactical intelligence, leadership skills, and ability to remain calm under extreme pressure had made her an indispensable member of one of America's most elite military units. She had participated in operations across 3 continents, always performing at the highest levels of professional excellence. The mission in Afghanistan was part of a broader campaign to disrupt Taliban leadership networks. Sarah's team had been tasked with eliminating key commanders while gathering intelligence on their organizational structure and operational plans. It was precisely the kind of complex, high-stakes operation that required the unique capabilities of SEAL Team 6. As the ground team secured the compound, Sarah maintained her overwatch position, scanning the surrounding area for potential threats. Her role as precision marksman required constant vigilance. She was responsible for protecting her teammates from threats they might not see coming, and for engaging targets that were beyond the effective range of their assault weapons. Movement caught her attention in a building complex 400 meters to the east. Through her scope, she could see armed figures moving into position with what appeared to be heavy weapons. Sarah immediately called in the threat. Ground leader, Overwatch 1. Multiple armed personnel moving into position, approximately 400 meters east of your location. They appear to have crew-served weapons and may be preparing an ambush. Copy, Overwatch 1. Can you engage? Sarah studied the targets through her scope. There were at least 6 individuals, and their positioning suggested they were indeed preparing to attack her teammates. The range was well within her capabilities, but the tactical situation required careful consideration. Ground leader, I have clear shots on multiple targets. Recommend you take cover while I eliminate the threat. Approved. Take them out. Sarah began engaging targets with methodical precision. Her first shot eliminated the apparent leader of the group, who was positioned behind a heavy machine gun. The second shot took down a fighter who was attempting to maneuver to a flanking position. The third and fourth shots neutralized 2 more threats before the remaining fighters realized they were under precision rifle attack. The surviving enemies attempted to retreat, but Sarah's position gave her clear lines of sight to their escape routes. Her fifth and sixth shots ended the engagement decisively, eliminating the threat to her teammates and preventing potential intelligence leaks about their operation. Ground leader, Overwatch 1. 6 threats eliminated, area secure. Outstanding shooting, Overwatch 1. Ground team continuing with mission. As her teammates completed their intelligence gathering, Sarah maintained her surveillance of the surrounding area. Her shooting during the engagement had been flawless. 6 targets eliminated with 6 shots at ranges from 400 to 600 meters under challenging environmental conditions. It was the kind of performance that had become routine for her, but which never failed to impress her teammates and superiors. Lieutenant Commander Morrison's voice came through her earpiece again. Overwatch 1, ground team is complete. Prepare for extraction. Sarah began breaking down her position, carefully packing her rifle and equipment while maintaining situational awareness. The extraction would require movement through potentially hostile territory, and her role would shift from precision shooting to tactical movement and close protection. As they moved toward the extraction point, Morrison fell in a step beside her. Sarah, that was some outstanding shooting back there. How many confirmed kills does that bring your total to? 99, sir. Morrison whistled softly. 99 confirmed kills in 2 years of operational service. That's got to be some kind of record. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and soberness at the milestone. Each of those statistics represented a tactical victory for her team and a contribution to mission success, but she never forgot that they also represented human lives ended by her actions. The responsibility that came with her exceptional abilities was something she carried constantly. It's about the mission, sir. Individual statistics are just a byproduct of team success. That's exactly the attitude that makes you such an effective team member, Morrison replied. But don't minimize your contribution. Your shooting has saved American lives on multiple occasions, and your tactical abilities have made every operation more successful. The helicopter extraction proceeded without incident, and Sarah found herself back at their forward operating base as the sun set behind the Afghan mountains. The intelligence gathered during the mission would be analyzed and distributed to other units, and the elimination of the Taliban commander would disrupt enemy operations throughout the region. As she cleaned her rifle and completed her equipment maintenance, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed since completing SEAL training. The exceptional marksmanship that had distinguished her during training had developed into genuine mastery through constant operational use. But more importantly, she had proven that her success during training translated directly into operational effectiveness. The next morning brought news that would significantly impact her career trajectory. Admiral Sinclair arrived at the forward operating base for a personal briefing with Sarah and her team leadership. The presence of a flag officer in a combat zone indicated that the conversation would have strategic implications. Petty Officer Martinez, Admiral Sinclair began, "Your operational performance over the past 2 years has been exceptional. Your marksmanship records speak for themselves, but your contributions go far beyond individual shooting statistics. Team leaders consistently rate your tactical intelligence and leadership abilities as outstanding." "Thank you, Admiral. I'm here to discuss your next assignment." Naval Special Warfare Command wants to establish a specialized precision shooting program, and they want you to lead the development of training protocols and operational procedures. You would be working with the most advanced equipment and techniques available and training the next generation of SEAL marksmen. Sarah felt a surge of excitement at the opportunity, but also concern about leaving operational service. "Admiral, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm not ready to leave operational teams. I feel like I'm making my most important contributions in the field." I understand that perspective, and it's one of the reasons you're being considered for this role. But consider the broader impact you could have. The techniques you've developed and the standards you've established could benefit hundreds of future operators. Your influence on the community could be far greater than what you accomplish as an individual shooter. The conversation continued for over an hour, covering the details of the proposed assignment and its potential impact on naval special warfare capabilities. Sarah learned that the program would involve not just training development, but also equipment testing, tactical innovation, and operational consultation for the most challenging precision shooting missions. As Admiral Sinclair prepared to leave, she made one final observation. "Sarah, when you first walked onto the beach at Coronado, many people questioned whether women belonged in special operations. Your success has answered that question definitively. Now you have the opportunity to help shape the future of these programs and ensure that they continue to evolve and improve." That evening, Sarah called her parents for the first time in several weeks. The secure satellite connection allowed her to speak with them about general topics, though operational details remain classified. "Mija, we saw a news report about women in special operations," her father said. They didn't mention names, but they talked about exceptional performance and breaking barriers. "We're proud of you, whatever you're doing." "Thanks, Dad. I wish I could tell you more, but you know how it is." "We understand. Just know that Miguel would be proud of what you've accomplished. You've honored his memory in the best possible way." After ending the call, Sarah stood outside her quarters looking up at the star-filled Afghan sky. The journey from that first day at Coronado to this moment had been longer and more challenging than she could have imagined. But it had also been more rewarding than her greatest hopes. She had not only achieved her dream of becoming a Navy SEAL, she had excelled at every aspect of the profession. Her shooting ability had reached legendary status within the special operations community. Her tactical skills had contributed to countless successful missions, and her leadership had earned the respect of teammates and superiors alike. But perhaps most importantly, she had proven that excellence was not limited by gender, background, or preconceptions. She had opened doors for other women who might follow in her path, and she had demonstrated that diversity of experience and perspective made military units stronger and more effective. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah thought about the decision she would need to make regarding the training assignment. Leading the development of advanced marksmanship programs would allow her to influence the capabilities of future generations of SEAL operators. Her techniques, standards, and innovations could benefit the community for decades to come. The young Marine who had started this journey to honor her brother's memory had become something more than she had ever imagined possible. She had become a warrior whose legacy would extend far beyond her individual achievements, whose influence would shape the future of American special operations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to serve. But tonight, Sarah Martinez could rest with the knowledge that she had not only achieved her dreams, she had exceeded them in ways that would inspire others to reach for their own impossible goals. The girl who was told she didn't belong had rewritten the definition of what belonging meant.